If emotional, slow burn stories about two broken people quietly rebuilding each other move you, please like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next cinematic story on this channel. The lights on the 27th floor were off. From the street, Wardline Studio looked like every other glass tower in downtown Oakland, rows of lit windows. A logo glowing on the top corner, the city's reflection sliding across its surface. But near the crown, one dark band cut through the grid of light like a missing tooth. Inside that dark band, in a boardroom with floor-to-ceiling glass, a man sat alone at a table buried in paper. Sketches lay scattered, a dozen versions of the same building. Drawn, redrawn, slashed through with red pencil, roof lines crossed out, courtyards circled and then X'd. Notes in the margin, words like flat, soulless, dead. Ethan Ward dug the heels of his hands into his eyes. He had once been able to look at a blank page and feel a building arrive in his chest before it ever hit his hand. Hallways, light wells, places for people to breathe. He had built hospitals where corridors felt less like tunnels and more like rivers of warmth. Libraries that made teenagers linger. Now, all he saw when he tried to design the new community center in East Oakland was geometry. The donors wanted a beacon for the neighborhood. The board wanted a showpiece. The city wanted something it could put on a brochure. He didn't even know anymore. Outside, the Bay Bridge glittered. Cars crawled across the black water. The city's noise rose up in a distant hum. In here, there was only the faint thrum of the air conditioning and the sound of his own breathing. He picked up one of the sketches, stared at it, then let it fall. "This is nothing," he muttered. "This is nothing." His throat tightened. He hadn't cried in a long time. Not when his firm split and he walked away from Hemsworth and Ward with a new name and a pried loose chunk of clients. Not when the first Wardline project got torn apart by a critic who said it had the emotional range of a high-end shopping mall. Not when his father's doctor said the word dementia in the same sentence as Graham Ward. But now, at 40, alone in a dark room with a stack of dead drawings, something in him slipped. "Why can't I feel anything?" he whispered. His voice broke on the last word. The tears were quiet. No ragged sobs, no cinematic shaking. Just a slow, humiliating overflow that left hot tracks down his face. He pressed the heels of his palms harder against his eyes, as if he could push everything back in. The door clicked. He froze. Footsteps, soft and practical, crossed the carpet. The overhead lights stayed off. Whoever had come in didn't reach for the switch. He lowered his hands slightly. In the dim light from the city, he saw a figure near the doorway. A woman in a dark janitorial polo and black pants. Her hair was pulled back in a quick knot. A rolling cart stood behind her, stacked with cleaning supplies and a yellow caution, wet floor sign tucked between mops. Her badge caught a stray reflection. It flashed the Wardline logo and a first name, Lena. He expected her to mumble an apology and back out. She didn't. She glanced at him once, not long enough to be rude, just enough to confirm what she was seeing. A man in a shirt rolled to the elbows, tie pulled loose, red-rimmed eyes. Then she stepped further into the room. She set a plastic box of tissues on the table near his elbow. Not right in front of him, not pushed toward his face, just there, within reach. Within, she sat down in a chair a few feet away, angled toward the glass wall instead of toward him. For a moment, they sat like that, two silhouettes, separated by a scatter of ruined designs. Outside, a siren wailed and faded. He cleared his throat. "You're not going to pretend you didn't see this?" he asked, his voice rough. "No," she said. Her tone was matter of fact, not unkind. Going to tell anyone he tried, she seemed to consider that. The lights from the street picked gold out of her profile, the line of her nose, the curve of her jaw. "No," she said again. "I don't see how that would help either of us." He let out a breath that sounded more like a shaky laugh than anything else. He looked down at the drawings, at the lines that refused to mean anything. "They're flat," he said. "I design spaces that are supposed to feel like they're holding people, and all I see is walls." The word scraped his throat. Silence stretched. When she spoke, Her voice was quiet, almost conversational. If it still hurts that you can't draw them, she said, it means there's still a foundation inside you to build on. He turned his head. What he asked? She shrugged, eyes on the glass. You're not numb, she said. You're upset, frustrated. That's something. People who are truly done don't sit in the dark surrounded by their failures. They go home, sleep fine, and don't think about it again. His fingers tightened around the edge of a sketch. My father always said feelings got in the way. He said before he could stop himself that if you wanted to build anything worth keeping, you had to ignore the noise inside. She picked at a thread on the cuff of her glove. Maybe he was wrong, she said. Or maybe he built the kind of things he could without them, and you're trying to build something different. He let that hang between them. The tissue box sat there, neatly square. He reached for it, pulled one out, and wiped his face. Sorry you had to walk into this, he said. She stood, smooth and efficient. Sorry you're having a night, she replied. If it makes you feel better. Nobody looks good crying under these lights. He huffed out a breath. It might have been a laugh. She gathered a few stray coffee cups from the far end of the table, stacked them, wiped a ring off the wood. She moved around the drawings without touching them, like someone who knew better than to rearrange another person's mess. At the door, she paused. Want the lights back on, she asked. He looked around at the room, at the glass walls reflecting his tired face. No, he said. The dark's fine. She nodded once. Good night, then, she said. He watched her leave. The door clicked shut. He sat alone again, but the air felt different, less like a sealed box, more like a room with a crack in the wall where air could get in. He looked at the tissue in his hand and the box she'd left. Then he picked up a pencil. The line that came out was still shaky, but it was there. The coffee truck outside Ward Line opened before dawn. That was when the construction workers came through, the nurses getting off night shift, the janitorial crews handing over badges. The CEO set usually didn't appear until the barista had had time to clean the machine twice. But this morning, just after 6, Ethan stood in line by the food truck window, hands in the pockets of his coat, hair still damp from a too-quick shower. Ahead of him, wearing a navy beanie and a scarf wrapped twice around her neck, was the woman from last night. Lena. He recognized her by the way she held herself, like someone who had learned to take up just enough space to be present without being in anyone's way. She ordered a cappuccino with cinnamon sprinkled on top. The barista chatted, used her name like they did this every morning. Same as always. Lena, he asked. Same as always, she said. Ethan stepped up behind her. Make that 2, he said. Put them both on my tab. The barista glanced at him, eyebrows lifting. You got it, he said, scribbling. Lena turned, surprise flickering over her face. You don't have to do that, she said. I know, Ethan replied. I want to. She studied him for a second, then shrugged. All right, she said. You should thank you. They took their paper cups and stepped away from the truck, toward the low concrete wall that framed a small plaza. Vines climbed the brick beside them, leaves reaching up toward a ledge. Little lights were woven through the branches, still faintly glowing as the sky lightened them. Ethan had designed that wall 10 years ago, back when he was just another ambitious senior architect at Hemsworth and Ward, desperate to prove he could make something both beautiful and under budget. It looks better now, Lena said, nodding toward the vines. Excuse me, he asked. The wall, she said, with the plants, the way the light hits it. It looked stronger than when I first started cleaning here. He hid a small, startled satisfaction behind his cup. Plants do that, he said. Change things. Wish they could pay rent, she said. Then my mom's pharmacy bills would be covered. He glanced at her. You take care of your mom, he asked. She sipped the cappuccino, eyes closing briefly at the first taste. Yeah, she said. She used to take care of me. Feels fair to return the favor. He nodded. I'm Ethan, he said. I work upstairs. Lena, she replied. I work everywhere no one notices until it's messy. He smiled. I noticed the tissues, he said. She squinted at him, then a small grin tugged at one corner of her mouth. Yeah, well, she said, I figured if I was going to walk in on a breakdown, I might as well leave supplies. I appreciate it, he said. And what you said, she tilted her head. About foundation, she asked. Yeah, he said that. She lifted a shoulder. Janitors know a thing or two about foundations. She said, we see what's under everything. He looked at the studio's glass facade, at the reflection of the sky in it. Do you draw? He asked. Nodding at the sketchbook half visible from her bag, she tensed, then relaxed. Not like you do, she said. Little things. Corners. Light. People. I used to study architecture before. She trailed off, giving a quick shake of her head. Before life, she said. Now I mop. Oh. He didn't push. Someone from HR walked by, heels clicking, phone in hand, eyes sliding over Lena and landing on Ethan. Morning, Mr. Ward, she chirped. Ethan nodded. Morning, he said. Lena's eyes widened. She looked from the HR woman to him, to the company logo on the side of the building, back to him. Mr. Ward, she repeated. He winced internally. He hadn't exactly lied last night, but he also hadn't introduced himself as the name etched in steel above the lobby doors. Ethan Ward, he corrected softly. Yeah. Her lips parted. You're the Ward, she said. As in, this is your studio. Ours, he said quickly. There's a lot of people in there. She huffed a small, incredulous sound. And last night I watched you cry over a table full of paper, she said. Okay. She took another sip of cappuccino. That's not how billionaires look on TV, she added. I'm not a billionaire, he said. TV lies about a lot of things. Then, she replied. He laughed, the sound loosening something in his chest. Are you freaked out? He asked. Knowing I'm the one who signs your checks, she considered that, nose wrinkling slightly. I'm more freaked out knowing the guy who signs my checks doesn't have anyone to hand him a tissue when his life sucks, she said. Her words hit him harder than most of the speeches he'd heard from consultants. I'm fine, he said automatically. You weren't, she said, but you might be. She glanced at her watch. I have another job later, she said, stepping back. Thanks for the coffee, Mr. Ward. Ethan, he said. She hesitated, then nodded. Ethan, she repeated. She walked away, weaving through the small flow of people heading into the building. He watched her go, cappuccino cooling in his hand, feeling as if the foundation someone had mentioned had just shifted under his feet. Their lives began to intersect in small, predictable ways. At first, it was just the coffee truck. He started getting in earlier, telling himself it was because of calls with clients in other time zones. More often than not, he ended up behind her in line, listening as she ordered the same cappuccino with cinnamon, the way she always added, extra hot, please, like she needed it to carry her a long way. They talked about nothing and everything, the ridiculousness of the marketing department's new slogan, the way the streetlights flickered on rainy mornings, the small bakery around the corner that sold day-old bread for half price. Sometimes evening found him still on the 27th floor when her shift started. He would hear her cart in the hall, the soft squeak of wheels, the rustle of trash bags. She never came into the boardroom without knocking. And if he was on a call or hunched over a drawing, she would leave quietly. On nights when work ground to a halt anyway, when his mind buzzed with static and his pencil hovered uselessly above paper, he found himself leaving his office and wandering. He discovered that Lena had claimed a corner of the emergency stairwell on the 20th floor. The first time he pushed open the heavy fire door, following the faint scent of bleach and lemon cleaner, he saw her sitting on the concrete steps with her back against the wall, sketchbook balanced on her knees, and her pen moved quickly. Above her, the narrow window at the landing framed a sliver of skyline, orange with sunset. Is this where you hide? He asked. She didn't startle. Is this where you come to escape the boardroom? She countered. He smiled. Sometimes, he said. He sat a few steps down from her, leaving space. What are you drawing? He asked. People, she said, angling the book so he could see. Quick lines, but full of life. A man hunched over a phone, shoulders rounded. A woman laughing, head thrown back. The security guard downstairs, eyes crinkled. He recognized them. "You're good," he said. She shrugged. "I'm nosy," she replied. "There's a difference. Being nosy is an architect's job," he said softly. "You have to know what people do when they think no one's looking." Her pen paused. "Is that what you do?" she asked. "On the 27th floor. Sometimes," he said. "Sometimes I just stare at walls and wonder when I became the kind of person my 20-year-old self would have hated." She chuckled. "Oh," she said, "you mean rich and tired." He huffed a laugh. "Something like that," he said. A week later, the building lost power for 2 hours in a freak storm. The emergency lights kicked in, casting long shadows down the corridors. Most of the staff went home. Wardline's generators hummed, keeping the servers alive, but non-essential systems went dark. On the 27th floor, the boardroom's glass walls reflected red from the exit signs. Ethan found Lena there, standing by the windows, watching lightning flash over the bay. Her cart sat parked outside the door, mop bucket gleaming faintly. "Feels like the city's holding its breath," she said as he stepped in. "It does that a lot," he replied. He picked up a marker from the table and walked to the glass. "What are you doing?" she asked. He uncapped it, pressed the tip to the glass, and drew a line. A curve, following the contour of a hill he could see in the distance, then another suggesting a roof. "Testing something," he said. She came closer, curiosity outweighing caution. "Looks like a wave," she said. "Could be," he said. "Or a roof line, if we anchor it here." He sketched in a column the rough suggestion of a wall. She reached for another marker, hesitated. He handed it to her without comment. He started another line. She added a window. He drew a courtyard. She added trees, little bursts of leaves. They worked in silence, the markers whispering against the glass. Lightning flashed, illuminating their reflections. Two figures, backlit by a city in a storm, drawing on their own sky tomorrow. He hadn't felt this kind of quiet focus in years. Not in a boardroom, not anywhere. When the lights flickered back on, the glass was covered in a messy, improvised elevation. Some lines wobbled. Some overlapped. It wasn't a plan, but it was alive. Lena capped her marker. "You should leave it up," she said. "Someone from accounting will complain," he replied. "Then tell them it's temporary art," she said. He smiled. "I might," he said, later. When he went home, he found the ghost of that drawing in his mind, the way her hand had moved, quick and sure, Mom, without worrying about scale or budget. The way she'd said, "If I were a kid, I'd want a corner over there to sit and draw," pointing to a space he'd left empty. Her comment sat in his notebook the next day, a little arrow labeled Kids Corner. He circled it. He started to change the way he thought about the community center. Less as a monument, more as a place where someone like Lena might feel comfortable sitting on the floor with a sketchbook. And he didn't tell the board that the janitor had improved his design. They wouldn't have understood. But he started to listen differently. To her, to himself. His father's room smelled like disinfectant and old paper. Graham Ward sat by the window of the expensive memory care facility, a blanket over his knees, an architectural magazine open on his lap. His white hair was thinner than Ethan remembered from childhood, but the line of his mouth was the same, a firm slash that rarely softens. "You're late," Graham said without looking up. "I was in a meeting," Ethan said, dropping a folder onto the small table. "Someone wanted the community center to have a donor's name carved into the front door. I suggested maybe we focus on building it first." Graham snorted. "Donors want their names," he said. "We want their money. That's the trade." He flipped a page. Ethan sat in the chair opposite him. "How's your head?" he asked. "Still attached," Graham replied. "The doctors seem determined to examine it every week. They keep asking me if I remember what year it is, as if that matters to a building." Ethan smiled faintly. "Do you?" he asked. His father shot him a look. "I remember every year a building of mine opened." He said, "That's more important than birthdays." He tapped the magazine. "I saw the piece on Wardline," he said. "They like your hospitals. They say you're human-centric." He said the last words as if they were slightly distasteful. "I try," Ethan said. Graham leaned back. Are you building anything people will still talk about in 50 years, he asked? Or are you just making nice little boxes for people to cry in? Ethan thought of the 27th floor, the tissue box, Lena's sentence about foundations. I'm trying to build places where the crying is allowed, he said quietly. Graham snorted again. Feelings are noise, Dro, he said. Noise you have to learn to tune out if you want your lines to be straight. And Ethan met his eyes. I'm not sure that's true anymore, he said. Graham stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to decide if his son was joking. When he realized he wasn't, he closed the magazine. Well, he said, good luck with your little centers. Maybe one day you'll build something worth my name. It was an old wound, and it hurt in all the usual places. Ethan left with a tight jaw and a new, stubborn determination. He did not want to build his father's buildings. He wanted to build his own. The past caught up with Lena in the quietest way. She was wiping down the long table in the boardroom, the overhead lights buzzing softly, when a magazine slid out from a stack and fell open at her feet. She bent to pick it up. A photograph stared up at her. Ethan Shahri, in a charcoal suit, standing in front of a sunlit atrium, white hair at his temples, catching the light. The headline read, Ethan Ward of Wardline, from Hemsworth and Ward to Healing Landmarks. Her fingers tightened on the glossy paper. Hemsworth and Ward, her old firm, the place she had once walked into with a portfolio under her arm and stars in her eyes. The name that had sat in the corner of every blueprint she'd traced, every site visit she'd tagged along on. She turned the page. A smaller photo showed him 10 years younger, standing beside another man in front of a model, both of them grinning. Underneath, founders Henry Hemsworth and Ethan Ward announced their split, launching Hemsworth Design and Wardline Studio respectively. Her heart thudded. She remembered the layoff email, the way her stomach had dropped when the subject line pinged internship update. She had saved it for months, then years. Then, when storage filled, she'd printed it, folded it, tucked it into the back of a sketchbook like a scar. She could see it in her mind even now, the polite paragraphs, the thanks for her time, the line about not the right fit for our evolving vision, the attachment from HR, evaluation summary. At the bottom, the small note, low potential for disruption, and in pale blue, the digital signature, E-Ward. She sank into a chair. On the screen at the far end of the room, someone had left up a slide deck. Bullet points about the community center deadlines, donors, cost overruns. A sentence in the notes Ping glared at her. If needed, reduce junior staff involvement to keep project on schedule. Her throat burned. Not again, she thought. Not to someone else. Not from the same name. She looked back at the magazine. The man who sat across from her at the coffee truck. The man who had cried in this very room. The man who had let her draw on glass and asked her where kids might want to sit. The same man who had signed, however mechanically, to end her shot at the career she'd once dreamt of. She stood. The tissue box she'd left weeks ago still sat near the center of the table, half full. She picked up a pad of company sticky notes and a pen. Her hand trembled once as though then steadied. She wrote, now I understand why you cried in the dark that night. Feeling is the foundation. But my foundation was once a line you signed away. Lena, she stuck the note to the tissue box. Then she unclipped her badge from her belt, set it beside the note, and walked out. She didn't say goodbye to anyone. Night staff could vanish without comment. Day people rarely noticed who emptied their bins. By the time Ethan came in next morning, harried from a dentist appointment and a call with a contractor, her locker in the sub-basement was already empty. He found the note after lunch. He had retreated to the boardroom between meetings, hoping for 10 minutes to breathe. The tissue box caught his eye first, because it made him think of her. The small square of yellow paper slapped on its side made his stomach drop. He read the note. Once, twice, the words swam. He sat down heavily, the chair creaking. Hemsworth and Ward, intern. Low potential for disruption. He hadn't thought about the layoff rounds in years. He remembered the flurry of forms HR had sent, the spreadsheets with names and numbers, the long meetings where partners argued about headcount. The way Henry had said, we hired too many kids. They all want to be genius designers. We only need 3. The rest can go draw coffee shops. He remembered skimming the lists for people he knew personally, speaking up for the ones he'd seen at their desks at midnight, the ones whose models had impressed him. He did not remember the name Lena Ortiz. He did remember the feeling of relief when the HR manager said, "We've taken care of it, Mr. Ward. If you could just sign at the bottom to confirm." He had signed his name in blue at the bottom of dozens of pages. He stared at Lena's note until the words blurred. Then he stood, took the tissue box, and went downstairs. "Tara," he said, striding into his assistant's office. "I need access to the old Hemsworth and Ward archives." She blinked. From before the split, she asked, "Is that legal?" "I still have copies of employment records for liability reasons," he said. "They're in the off-site storage. Get them, whatever it costs." She studied his face. "Okay," she said, "well, I'll make some calls." 2 days later, cardboard boxes arrived, smelling faintly of dust in storage rooms. He hauled one into his office and opened it. Names on paper. Hired, promoted, let go. He flipped through file after file, finding the layoffs from the year Lena had been there. There, interns. 5 names. He ran his finger down the list. There she was. Ortiz, Lena. Supervisor comments quick. Observant. Strong grasp of spatial relationships. Shows initiative. He turned the page. HR summary. Prepared 4 partners. Ortiz, Lena, reassigned to group. Feedback adequate but lacks standout qualities. Low potential for disruption. Recommend release at end of internship. Below, his own signature, dated, neat. His throat tightened. At the bottom of the evaluation stack, paper clipped to a different intern's file, he found a concept sketch he recognized. A plan for an art space he'd once pinned to the office wall. Common pulse. In the margin, different handwriting had added notes. What if we keep this area open for drop-ins? Natural light needed here. People draw longer when they feel warm. His handwriting. And below it, smaller, more compact. Another hand agree. Maybe benches that don't look like benches. L. O. He closed his eyes. He could see it now. A younger him, standing in a crowded critique, giving interns a chance to comment. A young woman near the back, dark hair pulled up, eyes bright, raising her hand. He might not have remembered her name then. She had remembered his for a decade. God, he whispered. He spent the rest of the afternoon reading. Every time he found a line where HR had softened a glowing comment or shifted credit to someone from a better school, his stomach cramped. He had told himself he'd been too junior then to change the machine, that he'd been busy, that he trusted the people whose job it was to handle people. He saw now how convenient that had been. Not intentional, he thought, does not equal not responsible. The next morning, he drove to the edge of the city where the memory care facility sat among carefully manicured lawns. Graham was awake, staring at a blank television screen. "I thought you had a meeting," his father said. "I do," Ethan said. "You're invited." Graham snorted. "I can barely remember what I ate for breakfast," he said. "You want me in your meetings now? I just want you to hear this," Ethan replied. He sat opposite his father. "When you built the Eastwood Tower, you fired a dozen junior staff to keep the budget in line," he said. "You used to joke about how their names blurred together. You said the work was what mattered, not the people doing it." Graham shrugged. "You think that building would still be standing if I'd asked a committee for permission every time I needed to cut someone?" he asked. "I think there are people who still remember the day they got a letter with your name on it," Ethan said quietly. "Not the tower." His father's jaw tightened. "What is this about?" he demanded. "It's about a woman who once worked for my firm," Ethan said, "who had ideas I never bothered to read, whose life veered in a different direction because I signed a line I didn't look at twice." Graham's gaze went cool. "So he said, you can't build anything if you stop for every sad story." "Maybe not," Ethan said. "But I'm starting to think that if the only way to build is on top of broken people, maybe what we're building isn't worth it." Graham stared at him. For a moment, something like uncertainty flickered behind his eyes. Then he looked away. "You always were the sentimental one," he muttered. Ethan stood. Maybe, he said, but I'm the one who has to live with my name now. Not yours. He left without waiting for a blessing. Back at Wardline, he called Tara and the CFO and the head of HR into the conference room. We're starting a new program, he said when they sat. I'm calling it Second Draft. They exchanged glances. What is it, Tara asked. A way of admitting we've thrown away good people, he said, and a way of inviting some of them back. He outlined it. A fund carved out of executive bonuses and a portion of profits from the next 3 commercial projects. Positions in the community center and future pro bono work reserved for designers, interns, and artists who had been cut loose in the name of efficiency. Paid residencies, part-time roles, mentorships. Is this about that janitor, the CFO asked before he could stop himself. It's about a lot of people, Ethan said, including her. HR frowned. This will not make us popular with some of the partners, she said. They'll see it as charity. Then we'll educate them, he said. We say we build for people. This is us proving we mean it. The CFO rubbed his temples. You know this hits your own compensation the hardest, he said. I know, Ethan replied. He thought of Lena's note, of the way she had simply walked away. This is me paying a bill, he added. One of many. Tara watched him, eyes sharp. You're serious, she said. Yes, he said. She nodded slowly. Then I'll help, she said. I have a cousin who runs a community arts center. They might know people we could reach out to. He met her gaze. Thank you, he said. It was a start. Not enough, but a start. He found Lena at the community arts center on a Wednesday night. The building sat near the train tracks, tucked between a laundromat and a small taqueria. Its front windows were covered in posters, workshops, open mics, a kids' drumming circle. The paint on the door was peeling, but the light inside was warm. Through the glass, he saw her. She stood at the front of a room with paint-splattered tables, a dozen adults and teenagers seated around them. A chalkboard behind her read, "Draw the room you can't forget." They sketched hospital corridors, kitchens, bus stations. She moved between them, offering suggestions. Maybe tilt the perspective a bit. She told a boy drawing a stairwell. Make us feel the height. Don't be afraid of the shadows. She told a woman drawing a church pew. They're part of the memory too. Ethan hovered just outside, his breath fogging the glass. On the far wall, a large canvas hung alone. A man sat at a long table in a dark room, head bowed over his hands. Outside the glass walls, the city glowed. The light caught his hair, his shoulders, the edges of the scattered paper in front of him. The painting was titled, in neat white letters at the bottom, "Man in the High Room." His chest tightened. It was him. Not flattering, not cruel, just true. The angle of his shoulders, the way his hand gripped the pencil even in defeat, the vast emptiness of the room around him. He felt exposed and somehow seen. The class broke up with laughter and the rustle of paper. People drifted past him, some with rolled drawings under their arms. Lena stayed behind to wipe down tables, stack stools, put away charcoal. He stepped inside. The door chimed. She looked up. Her expression flickered from surprise to wariness, then to something guarded and still. Hi, he said. She put the last stool on the table. We're closed for the night, she said. I know, he said. I'm not here for a class. She waited. He swallowed. I read your file, he said, from Hemsworth and Ward. I went through the archives. Her jaw clenched. Congratulations, she said. You're better informed about my life now than you were when you signed me off a payroll. He winced. I deserve that, he said. He took a breath. I'm sorry, Mom, he said. Not in the vague public statement way. Specifically, boss. I signed my name to a decision that ended your time there. I didn't read your evaluations. I didn't see the notes you wrote on those early designs. I trusted a system that was designed to keep people like you out and people like me in, and I let it speak for me. He forced himself to meet her eyes. That does not undo what happened, he said. It does not give you back the years you could have spent building instead of cleaning up other people's buildings. But you deserve for me to say it out loud. The room was quiet. Somewhere outside, A train horn blew, long and low. Lena's fingers curled around the back of a chair. You know, she said softly, when that email came, I told myself it was because I wasn't good enough. That if I'd been special, someone like you would have noticed. He shook his head, throat tight. You were good enough, he said. The problem was that I wasn't. Her chin lifted a fraction. Maybe, she said, but my rent still needed paying. My mom still needed medicine. I couldn't sit around waiting for some man in a high room to realize I'd been hurt. I know, he said. He reached into his bag and pulled out a thin folder. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said. Honestly, I don't think I would, if I were you. But I wanted you to know that I've changed some things, not just my mind. He placed the folder on the nearest table and stepped back. She opened it slowly. Inside were documents with the ward line letterhead, a description of the second draft program, a budget, a list of roles attached to the Oakland Community Center, a paid artist in residence, a community design liaison, a coordinator for open studio nights. Her name wasn't printed there, but next to several roles, a handwritten note read, "Someone like Lena." I took a pay cut, he said quietly. So did the top executives. We set aside money to bring back people who were told, in one way or another, that they didn't belong in the room. We're building the community center with residents at the table, not just donors. If you want to be involved, if you want to submit work or run workshops or tell me to get out of the way, there's space for you. She looked up sharply. You want me to come back to ward line, she asked. After all that, I want you to come stand in the room with your name on the wall. If that's something you'd ever want, he said, not as a janitor, as an artist, as a designer, as whatever you decide you are. He swallowed. And if you never want to set foot in my building again, he added, I will still run the program. I will still fund the positions. Because this isn't about easing my conscience. It's about not letting more people fall through cracks I built. She closed the folder. Her throat moved. Why are you really here, she asked. Tonight, in this room. He glanced at the painting. Because I saw what you made out of my worst moment, he said. And it reminded me that the man in that room doesn't have to stay that way. She followed his gaze. I didn't paint you to flatter you, she said. I know, he replied. I painted you because when I walked in and saw you like that, I realized not everyone who looks strong is unbreakable, she said, and that sometimes the people in those high rooms are bleeding in ways the people under them never see. Her fingers loosened on the chair. I also painted you so I wouldn't forget, she added, so I wouldn't romanticize you if you ever came back. He smiled, a little crooked. Good, he said. Hold me to it. He turned to leave. At the door, she called his name. He looked back. She crossed the room, pulled something from a folder near the wall, and held it out. A smaller print of Man in the High Room on heavy paper. If you're going to keep signing things, she said, keep this on your desk, in case you ever start thinking of names as lines on a spreadsheet again. He took it carefully. I will, he said. Her gaze searched his face. I'm not promising anything, she said, about coming back, about anything. I know, he said. I'm the one who made sure you don't owe me anything. She nodded once. Good, she said. He walked out into the night with the painting under his arm and the weight of her words in his chest. The community center opened on a bright April afternoon. The building was not a monument. It was 2 stories high, brick and wood and glass, wrapped around a courtyard with trees that were small now, but would, one day, shade everything. Inside, walls held murals painted by local kids. A row of windows looked onto a room full of tables and easels. The sign out front didn't bear a corporate logo, just 4 words, East Oakland, Common Pulse. Lena stood under a string of papel picado, watching a group of teenagers argue good-naturedly about which color chalk to use on the sidewalk. She had said yes, not at first, not with tears and embraces. She'd taken a week, then another. In the end, what tapped on her was not Ethan's apology, nor the offer of a paid role. It was a kid named Zoe. Zoe was 11, All elbows and curiosity, living in a foster home that sent her to the arts center twice a week. Ethan met her when he started volunteering there, partly to recruit for second draft, partly because he needed to be in a place where buildings didn't matter as much as the people inside them. Zoe drew superheroes, not the kind from movies, the kind who looked like the adults around her caseworkers, bus drivers, teachers with capes made of tiny worries and small acts of kindness. One day, she plopped a drawing in front of him. A tall stick, figure in a suit, a crumpled tissue in one hand, a building in the other. On the chest, instead of a logo, she'd drawn a heart held together with tape. "What's this?" he asked. "That's you," she said. "Crying guy." He choked on a laugh. "You think I'm a superhero?" he asked. She shrugged. "You cried and then you showed up again." She said, "Most grown-ups either cry and disappear or don't come back when things are weird. You came back. That's super to me." When he told Lena the story, she'd smiled despite herself. Zoe adored Lena. She'd started coming to Lena's classes at the Arts Center, then followed her to the new Common Pulse space in the community center once it opened. On the day of the opening, Zoe pressed two small objects into Ethan's hand. Bracelets, made of thin cord and metal beads with letters on them. One spelled hope. The other, stay. "You wore hope last time," she told Ethan. "You need it so you don't go back to being crying guy." She pointed at Lena needs stay so she doesn't run away when she gets scared that you'll act like the old you. Then she ran off before either adult could respond. Now, as people filtered through the new building, Ethan stood on the 27th floor of Wardline again. The boardroom was gone. In its place was a different room. The long corporate table had been replaced by smaller round tables that could be moved. The heavy leather chairs were gone, swapped for simple wooden ones. The carpet was lighter. Panels in the ceiling glowed softly, mimicking afternoon sun even on gray days. On one wall, hung where the slides had once been projected, was the original painting. "Man in the High Room." Below it, a small brass plaque read, "The foundation is feeling Lena Ortiz, 2024. Another line, smaller. "In gratitude for those who remind us we are human." Ethan stood with his hands in his pockets, hope bracelet snug against his wrist, watching people drift in. Tara walked around slowly, taking it in. "This doesn't feel like a boardroom," she said. "Good," he said. "What do we call it now?" she asked. "Lightroom," he suggested. She smiled. "Pretentious," she said, "but it fits." Zoe ran in, breathless. She skidded to a stop in front of the painting. "That's you," she whispered, as if there were any doubt. "It was," he said. She nodded solemnly. "Okay," she said, "just making sure we all remember." Lena stepped through the doorway. She wore a simple dress, paint on her fingers, hair pulled back. The bracelet with the word stay circled her wrist, the letters bright against her skin. Her eyes went straight to the painting, then to the plaque. He watched her read her own name. He saw the way her shoulders rose and fell on a quiet breath. She walked over, stood beside him. "You actually did it," she said. "I had help," he replied. "I know," she said. "You always did. You just didn't look down before." They stood in silence for a moment, side by side. Through the glass, the city spread out, busy and indifferent. In here, the room felt like a held breath. Zoe bounced on her heels. "Say something," she urged. "Adults always say things in rooms like this." Lena laughed softly. "Fine," she said. She turned slightly toward Ethan. "I don't know what we are," she said. "Friends? Co-conspirators? Two people who met in a moment we both might have been ashamed of and decided not to be." She looked up at the painting. "But I do know this," she said. "You didn't just fix a room or a building. You changed the way your name sits on my tongue. And that is not nothing." His chest ached in a way that felt oddly like relief. "I can live with that," he said. He lifted his wrist slightly. "You think hope and stay will be enough?" he asked. She glanced at her bracelet, then at his. "Maybe we need one more," she said. "Brave, for the days when staying feels harder than leaving." From behind them, Zoe piped up. "I'm on it," she said. "Bead budget pending." They laughed. The sound echoed in the lightroom, bouncing off glass and wood and paint. For the first time in a long time, the 27th floor didn't feel like a high, lonely tower. It felt like a place where someone might come in on a bad night, set down a box of tissues, say a true thing, and be heard. Outside, the sun slid lower, casting warm bands of light across the floor. Inside, a man and a woman stood in front of a painting that made both of them remember who they had been and who they were choosing to become. No declarations, no dramatic promises. Just two people and a kid with bracelets in a room that once held only walls. A room with a new foundation, feeling